Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Alaska Weather on the 11th of June. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information and get your forecast anytime by calling us at 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line, of course. Find us online at weather.gov/Alaska. One click is your forecast. Click on the map there. You'll get your local forecast information, and from there, an awful lot of additional information on that one webpage. If you haven't tried it, go to mobile.weather.gov. That is a lower bandwidth, easier to use, mobile-friendly Weather Service forecast page. Bookmark that on your home screen and you'll be able to get to it in places where you might have a little more trouble with the big beefy website that you look at here on our screen. If you can't find what you're looking for, whether it's a river forecast, an aviation forecast, a weather observation, a link to a satellite picture, whatever you need, if it's weather related, I'm happy to help. david.snyder@noaa.gov is the way you find me. Let's take a look at your fire danger. As we look ahead to tomorrow, high fire danger is expected to be across the upper Koyukuk Valley into areas around the Kobuk and Noatak Valley. Working with the Alaska Fire Service, you'll notice that the conditions are changing a little bit there. We've had several days of shower and storm activity, and right now it looks like the main focus for your Wednesday is going to be a little bit further out toward the west. So we're going to keep watch on that. So the main instances of fire that we've been worried about have been across the central and eastern interior. That trend seems to be shifting, at least for tomorrow, a little bit further out toward the west. Here's a look at the visible satellite picture here. And again, you can see a lot more detail in this because we're actually capturing what the clouds are looking like, not using a thermometer to sense them through infrared radiation. So in this case, we're seeing a lot of drier air trying to work its way up toward areas near Sitka and the outer coast. We've got low pressure here in a front stretching all the way through southeastern Alaska, and along this boundary is where we're seeing some light rain. Some of that rain is also pushing its way into Prince William Sound, and then just missing parts of Kodiak because we've got a lot of dry air working in on the north side of that front. Across the interior, as we watch the loop play out one more time, watch this area here. These are the afternoon clouds developing, and that's where shower and thunderstorm activity should be found really the rest of the day. This gradual drift is moving southward here, so as we see storms develop here, most of those will be moving fairly slowly southward into more places that have seen a wealth of heating throughout the day. A look out to the west identifies another area of low pressure. That circle right there is the center, and as you watch the loop again, you can see that frontal boundary lurking northward into the southern parts of the Bering Sea, just gradually loping its way north and east, kind of like a bear after a big old lunch. And across Adak and Atka, some areas of light rain and some fog, probably some poor visibility at times. But you can pick out a lot more fog here with the visible satellite picture. Look at these low, smooth clouds across St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew, all the way into Nunivak Island and the Yukon coast, and then pushing right up against the Alaska Peninsula. That is areas of low cloud stratus and fog. And we see more of that up across the Chukchi coast. Colder air dropping southward. A weak frontal boundary here, but this is going to be part of our weather picture across the North Slope for the next few days as that boundary slowly moves across into the eastern Brooks Range. Probably doesn't get across it very much, at least in Alaska territory anyway, but it does look like it might nudge up into Arctic Village and up over the edge just a little bit. So cool, damp air spilling southward into the coastal plain. Watch, and you can actually see it on the move here as we go throughout the course of the day. The visible satellite picture is just a wonderful, wonderful, we call it a tool. Some days I do kind of treat it like a toy, though. It is a beautiful thing to watch. Today's weather picture, high pressure sitting out across the Gulf of Anadyr, 1,018 millibars there. Widely scattered showers and maybe a few thunderstorms out there for sure this afternoon. Colder air is dropping southward. You can see that area of fog slowly moving out ahead of that. And low pressure again, as we said, out across the central and eastern Gulf. Periods of light rain around Prince William Sound and not quite to Kodiak Island, and then stretching and covering up most of southeastern Alaska today. Not all stations reporting rain, but several of them are. For Adak and Atka, we see some areas of light rain there. That low pressure system out to the west, 982. Not a terribly strong or beefy storm, but one that is creating some small craft advisories out to the west. That'll gradually fill in a little bit tonight to 994 millibars. The frontal boundary working across the chain and into the southern Bering Sea. Having trouble moving a whole lot further north thanks to high pressure sitting again across the Gulf of Anadyr. Low pressure will sit here across the Gulf of Alaska for tonight and into tomorrow. Still kind of slinging some moisture into southeast. High pressure across British Columbia, again trying to level things out across the Gulf, but it will keep that moisture feed focused right across the north and eastern Gulf where some moisture is certainly needed. Showers will continue across southern parts of the interior into the Bristol Bay region, and we're still watching that front across the north as it sags southward into northern parts of the Yukon and the upper parts of the Yukon Valley for Alaska. Areas of fog and light rain, maybe some drizzle will be found as a result of that. It doesn't move a whole lot for your Wednesday, but out ahead of that, where the heat of the day is and certainly the heat of the summer is found, widely scattered showers and thunderstorms will be back once again. We expect those all the way from the Talkeetnas into southwest, into the Yukon Valley, and into the eastern interior. For southeast, areas of light rain should continue. There will be some drier patches from time to time, and as you move further west, it becomes a little more showery, like Yakutat and into Prince William Sound. Our front across the Aleutians is still nudging northward. It doesn't move very much. Again, same problem. High pressure up to the north will kind of keep that locked in place. On the eastern side of that, though, we wouldn't be surprised to find some areas of fog. Some of that could be fairly close to the west coast. And as we get into Thursday, more of the same. Low pressure across the Chukchi coast. Our low pressure system here in the south is now finding a weakness and moving into the western Gulf slowly. You can see the front is just south of St. Paul and St. George, and now over places like Cold Bay and False Pass, and just west of Nikolsky and east of Atka. Shower and thunderstorm activity will also drift further southward across the very southern interior and into southwest and parts of south central. Light rain may still be a possibility around southeast, and our front now has found a weakness across the eastern Brooks Range and seems to be dropping southward toward Eagle. Watch for a few shower and thunderstorms around the vicinity of that low, especially near the Alcan border. And up north, it might be just cold enough to see a little bit of a mix with rain and snow right along the coastline itself. Most areas will be dealing with some light rain, but it could be a cold rain at that. For Wednesday morning, temperatures are going to stay pretty mild across the interior. Upper 40s and lower 50s should be expected from Fort Yukon all the way down toward Bethel. About 48 or so around King Salmon and Dillingham, Kodiak included. Upper 40s and lower 50s for southeast. About the same for south central. Really, the coolest and most notable changes will be on the north slope. Temperatures there, like Utqiagvik, could drop just below the freezing point to 28 degrees. St. Paul looking at 41. Most of the central and eastern chain will be in the 40s, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint just shy of 50 degrees. High temps for your Wednesday, back in the lower to mid 70s. Eagle could be one of the hot spots at 75. Galena looking at 72. McGrath 75. Temps around Bethel and out toward the west coast in the upper 60s and lower 70s. Macoriac a little bit cooler at 56. Gamble and St. Lawrence Island around 46 degrees. About 53 in Kotzebue, Utqiagvik, and Kaktovik looking at 36. Southeast, you'll see temps in the mid to upper 50s thanks to rain and cooler cloud cover, and temps in the 60s for most of south central, 56 in Kodiak. Overnight lows on Thursday morning, 40s and 50s once again for most of the interior, south central in the upper 40s to low 50s. Sandpoint, Cold Bay, False Pass, and many of our friends there in the peninsula looking at temps in the 40s, 42 for St. Paul and St. George, upper 40s to low 50s for southeast. Utqiagvik looking at 29 with a high of 37 on Thursday.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to your aviation weather now. IFR conditions are expected to be hit and miss across a large part of the Bering, but St. Paul and St. George may eke out on the MVFR side to start your Wednesday morning, so some good news there. Most of your coastal areas along the west will be looking at VFR to start your day. Look for IFR across a large chunk of the Gulf, but just east of Kodiak Island, and then marginal conditions for Prince William Sound, a large chunk of the Kenai Peninsula, maybe hovering fairly close to Anchorage, if not right on top of it, and then a large chunk of the higher terrain of southeast, probably looking at IFR, including southern southeast, but MVFR sneaking into areas close to the capital city, maybe just south of it, and then right over Sitka, areas from Juneau north toward Gustavus, and Haines and Skagway probably start out at IFR for your Wednesday morning. Now, by the afternoon, you may stay there with IFR conditions from Yakutat all the way into the northern panhandle and along the higher terrain. MVFR, though, should be the rule for most of the rest of southeast, especially south of Gustavus all the way down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and Craig. IFR east of Kodiak Island, watch for some of that to pull out of Cook Inlet, but hover around Prince William Sound and a good chunk of the Kenai Peninsula. Widely scattered shower and thunderstorm activity for the interior once again, which will include south central. Marginal conditions for the Beaufort Seacoast, Chukchi Coast looking at IFR, and IFR conditions hovering very near St. Paul and St. George, so hopefully it doesn't change. Look for IFR conditions for Adak and Atka as well. For Thursday morning, IFR hovers across the north slope, but maybe not over the coastal plain itself. Look for marginal conditions around the Copper River Valley, Prince William Sound, down through the Kenai, and through the Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula. IFR lingers across the higher train of southeast, and also over Juneau up toward Hayden, Skagway, and Gustavus. South of that, it looks like marginal conditions will prevail. For the central and western Aleutians, IFR conditions should continue there. Most of the west coast and the interior looks to be VFR. Watch for widely scattered convection again, once again, generally south of the Yukon Valley all the way into south central. IFR conditions probably pulling way west of St. Paul and St. George for the afternoon, so you might sneak in some afternoon flights there. The central and eastern chain looks to be IFR that continues all the way up toward Kodiak Island. MVFR for most of southeast. Prince William Sound may get a little bit of a break, and you'll see MVFR pulling southward past Kenai as well. Here's your pass conditions. We're going to watch for marginal levels to start the day in Anaktuvuk with some improvement as the day goes on. Same goes for Adigan Pass. You'll notice Lake Clark and Merrill Pass are looking at VFR conditions through most of the day. Rainy Pass, we expect to see VFR probably through your Wednesday afternoon, and with that we would expect to see some shower and storm activity probably around Windy Pass and on over into Isabel Pass. VFR conditions there. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see VFR. Tanita Pass, look for marginal levels as the day goes on. Shower and storm activity will be possible there, and all the way down into Portage Pass, marginal levels of visibility and ceilings expected through the midweek, and then IFR conditions for Chilkoot and White Pass for your Wednesday. Freezing levels show a little bit of a slug of cool air is dropping southward out of the Arctic, heading for the Brooks Range. It'll probably stop there. Most other parts of southeast, of south central, southwest, and the interior are looking at levels at or above 6,000 to 8,000 feet. A little bit warmer levels down south of the southern parts of southeast. And you can see a little bit of a cooler nudge coming in from the west and northwest there, but really the big slug of cool air should stay north of the Brooks Range. Along that boundary, we do find a little bit of a heightened area of isolated moderate icing potential there. Most of that's going to be way up there around 9,000 feet, and same goes for the Alaska Peninsula, the chain, and the west, anywhere from about 8,000 to 9,000 feet. Watch for widely scattered shower and storm activity across the interior, which of course implies isolated but severe icing potential. Low pressure across the Arctic is driving in that northwesterly flow again. That will push some cooler air right up against the mountains, but the main storm path continues to be right here across the Pacific, and that is just nudging its way into southeast and right along the Alaska Peninsula, around 115 to 125 knots. At 9,000 feet, broad westerlies coming in 25 to 30 knots or so across the north range. Low pressure sitting across the Gulf, coming in with west and southwesterlies into southeast, and an easterly return flow coming in across the Chugach and the Kenai Peninsula, 10 to 15. Low pressure also sitting south of the Aleutians. That's blowing into south and southeasterly flow, 15 to 25. Look for the low across the northern Gulf. That'll bring in a stronger southwesterly flow at 3,000 feet. Some of that reaches into northern parts of southeast. You're mostly getting a broad westerly flow across the interior, 10 to 20, and 15 to as strong as 40 knots up across the north slope. Some of that just grazing the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at around 3,000 feet. What about turbulence? Well, because of that, we've got isolated moderate across some parts of the north slope, generally below 4,000 feet for a little bit of chop. Some of that outside the northern Gulf, and considerable moderate across parts of the Aleutians.
Dual polarization technology is a major upgrade to the current radar system. It allows forecasters a better idea of what's actually out there and can help keep you safe.
Current radar technology transmits and receives information in the horizontal direction, which is very limited. Dual polarization technology, in addition to the horizontal, transmits and receives vertical energy, which allows forecasters to get information about the size, shape, and phase of the precipitation. We can use that information to better determine the precipitation type to expect at your given location.
There you have it. This new technology is currently being installed in radars across the country and is already being used by National Weather Service forecasters to produce better, more accurate forecasts. Learn more here and follow us. Want to know about the future of weather radar? Well, the National Severe Storms Lab has it here with its new phased array radar. Let's check it out.
It's a non-moving radar. It has 4 faces of the antenna, each pointing in different directions. One of the big advantages is that we're seeing so far, it can sample the area around the radar in less than a minute, maybe even a half a minute. And this is 5-6 times faster than what they can do today.
NSSL is leading the development of future weather radar with this project. Learn more here and follow us. The Storm Prediction Center is one of the NOAA weather partners. They are located in the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Greg Carbon gives us a glimpse into what the SPC does.
Our mission is to analyze and forecast severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds from those thunderstorms across the lower 48 states, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the primary missions of the Storm Prediction Center is the issuance of severe thunderstorm and tornado watches across the country when conditions appear to be coming together to support the development of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
The world-class meteorologists in the Storm Prediction Center specialize in severe weather and keeping you safe. Learn more here and follow us.
The National Severe Storms Lab is working on increasing the lead time for severe weather warnings. The national average for tornado warnings is currently 13 minutes, but more notice would be helpful, especially for those in charge of moving large groups to shelter. Warn on Forecast will help forecasters issue hazardous weather warnings earlier. The project will give them more info about the chances of strong winds, large hail, and even tornadoes.
Currently, warnings are created by forecasters looking at the atmosphere outside, understanding its volatility, and then comparing that to how they see the Doppler radar presenting what's going on inside thunderstorms. Warn on Forecast is an idea where we're going to take the massive amounts of satellite, radar, and surface data and stick them all into a very high resolution prediction model. And then by producing new forecasts every 15 or 20 minutes, the forecasters hopefully will be able to use that model to produce warnings that extend out to an hour.
Before the National Weather Service can use this tool, it must be developed and tested. One big challenge will be deciding how to get the model predictions to the forecasters.
I'm going to keep this one very low. I'm just adjusting the track.
These hazardous weather prediction models are going to produce a huge amount of output. And this fire hose of data is just too much for forecasters to handle in real time quickly. So in order to help deal with that, NSSL has developed a related project called Facets. And Facets is the methodology which will enable forecasters to focus very quickly on the most important threats.
Once Warn on Forecast and Facets are proven to be reliable and effective, then forecasters will be better able to inform you of threats nearby. Learn more here and follow us.
The Hazardous Weather Testbed is located at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. It is used for experiments that will allow forecasters to learn and apply new technologies.
The Hazardous Weather Testbed is a really unique space throughout all of NOAA. And this is where the researchers and the operational folks come together in a common space to solve operational problems and to test new research tools that the research community is working on. The goal is to accelerate the transfer from research to operations of the newest tools and techniques.
People come from around the world to collaborate on this unique project.
We can bring together not only NOAA people, but also university people, faculty, researchers, private sector meteorologists, folks working in other countries in meteorology, forecasters can all come together and focus on what the problem of the day is with the forecasters.
Each spring, several experiments occur in the Hazardous Weather Testbed. Learn more here and follow us.
What are you looking at? And what are you ignoring? Did you notice the NOAA logo in the corner? Forecasters have a lot of information in front of them too. Every second counts during severe weather, and decisions about where to focus are constantly being made. This could be even more challenging in the future. Phased array radar will produce 4 to 6 times more information than what we have now, which brings us to the question researchers are hoping to answer. Will more radar information affect forecasters' decisions?
From our past experiments, we've learned a lot about how forecasters think during the warning decision process, but we've also learned that those thought processes are very complex, and for that reason, we need a better way to be able to track forecasters' cognitive activity.
Inbounds and possibly golf ball sized hail.
An eye tracker is a piece of technology that is used to determine in real time where someone's eye gaze is located. And these eye trackers are typically video-based, which means a camera sits below a computer monitor, and with infrared light and vector analysis, we can determine where a person is looking and how their eyes are moving.
Eye tracking is already being used in the medical field and air traffic control. Using similar research methods, NSSL is discovering the benefit for weather forecasting too. Phased array radar will give forecasters a lot more to think about. Understanding their decision-making process will help researchers develop even more user-friendly tools. So what's the benefit for you? Even better weather warnings. To learn more, check us out online and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And a look at your sea ice update this afternoon. Marginal ice will continue to be fairly close to the coast, but you'll notice a broad area of open water. Not sea ice free yet, but certainly open water across the Beaufort. And there's still a wealthy area of high concentration ice from Utqiagvik all the way out toward Prudhoe Bay and Kaktovik. Now, what we wonder is some of this pack ice may start to move a little bit further southward in the next couple days as this area is kind of released to move a little bit more freely. And you'll also notice a broad area of open water here north and west of Wainwright and Point Lay, but still looking at some high concentration ice right up next to the coast. For the very latest information anytime, head to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for the latest information and mapping from the Alaska Sea Ice Program. On to southeast now. Light winds will continue up across the outer coast, about 10 to 15 knots there, with seas running around 8 feet. In the Lynn Canal, 20 knots, 4-foot seas, all that wind coming in from the south, and generally light breezes across the central and southern inside passage, 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3-foot seas. As we get into Thursday, winds become even more light and variable following the frontal passage, and after that's well to the east and north and dissipated, you'll see 5 to 10 knots across the outer coast in kind of a variable direction. Anywhere from 6 to 7-foot seas across the outer coast and 2 to 3-foot seas on the inside, still looking at that light breeze, the strongest of which, of course, in the Lynn Canal, southerlies 15 knots and 3-foot seas there. In Prince William Sound, look for a light northeast wind, 15 knots, 2-foot seas, 15 to 20 knot wind across the north and western Gulf Coast, 7 to 8-foot seas, and generally light southerly winds working their way and snaking their way up through the Cook Inlet, about 2 to 3-foot seas there on that 10 to 15 knot wind. Pretty much same conditions on Thursday, more of a east to westerly breeze across the inlet, northeasterlies across the western Barrens, a little bit more of an easterly flow across most of the north and western Gulf, 10 to 15 knots, about 4 to 5-foot seas there, 6-foot seas outside of Hitchinbrook entrance. Prince William Sound still looking at easterlies, very light, 10 knots and 2-foot seas for you. Across Kodiak Island, 15 to 20 knots on either side, looking for 5-foot seas in Chillicothe Strait, 7-foot seas to the east, 5 to 6-foot seas down the Alaska Peninsula, and then light winds and small seas around Bristol Bay, 10 knots and 2-foot seas there on Wednesday. Look for a broader easterly flow. Remember, as that front's working its way up through the Alaska Peninsula, we're going to see stronger winds in the vicinity of that, but not too terrible. 25 to 30 knots, small craft advisories in the vicinity there with 8 to 11-foot seas, 4 to 5-foot seas down the Bering Sea coast side, and 20 knots from the north and eastern side of Chillicothe Strait with a 4-foot sea. For the Aleutians, look for an east and northeasterly wind coming in across the central and western chain, especially 9 to 10-foot seas there, 7 to 11-foot seas across the central chain, and more of an easterly flow for an Alaska, Nikolsky, and to the south you'll see 9-foot seas. That'll continue as we head into Thursday. A little bit more of a northerly push coming across the central chain as that front is moving off to the east. That makes way for that high pressure system to blow in a little bit more, 15 to 20 knots in most areas, and expecting about about 5 to 7 foot seas in most of the central and western parts of the region. For the west coast, light winds into Norton Sound, 2 foot seas for you. Northerlies coming off of St. Lawrence Island into Etoll and Strait, and St. Paul and St. George, northeasterlies 15 knots and 3 foot seas there on Wednesday. For Thursday, not a big change for Norton Sound, very small seas, a pleasant day out on the water. North and easterlies across St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island. A little bit of a stronger flow though out across the Kuskokwim Delta, 25 knots and 6 foot seas there. Northeasterlies still blowing into St. Paul and St. George with a 5 foot sea. For the North Slope, westerlies coming in across the Beaufort 20 to 25. Expect 4 to 5 foot seas there. Light winds coming ashore for the Chukchi Coast and into Kotzebue Sound. 10 knots and 2 foot seas expected there on Wednesday. For Thursday, a little bit more of a southwesterly flow into the Chukchi, 2 to 3 foot seas expected. And winds are blowing from east to west across the Beaufort now, 10 to 15 with 2 to 3 foot seas in the ice-free waters. Let's take a look at the maps one more time for tonight. A cold front dropping southward into the coastal plain, and the North Slope will kind of butt up against the Arctic coast and then make its way up to the ridges of the Brooks Range as we head into tonight and tomorrow. On either side of that, we're going to see some light rain and some fog and some low stratus with that. South of that, though, it's still plenty warm for shower and thunderstorm activity, and a lot of that will be across the central and eastern interior and southwestern Alaska tonight. More of the same over the next couple days as this area gradually shifts southward very slowly. For southeast, light rain and some low clouds and low decks as we go through tonight and tomorrow. Watch a front work its way across the central and eastern chain tonight and into your Thursday, and it'll focus on the Alaska Peninsula as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday. Light rain continues across many parts of the interior and southeast. As we get out into the Alaska Range and north, that becomes more showery in nature. Southwest, watch for showers and a few thunderstorms there. More of the same on Thursday. You can see a little bit of a light rain possible across southeast, and the front will stir up the winds a little bit more in the Alaska Peninsula with cool weather for the Beaufort Seacoast. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.